A great city can't be a great city without great culture. And in any great city, those iconic physical pillars of a community are a bit of a compass for those who live here and those who come and visit.
Orchestra Hall is one of many stages here in Detroit, but it's probably the gem of all those stages.
When I first walked in the door of Orchestra Hall for the very first time, when our then concertmaster was playing solo, as she used to do every Monday on the stage, it took my breath away.
It's a fantastic historical, cultural asset. The orchestra is great, but it's the whole environment. It's the ambiance, it's everything.
There's been a member of my family in the Detroit Symphony for half a century. As a kid, I always felt like I was being transported kind of to another world when I would come here. There's a certain magic that's involved when you know you're in a building where great people have stood before you.
When we play the music of Rachmaninoff, for example, to think that he once sat at a piano on this stage and gave a recital, it's amazing to me. And to think that Louis Armstrong performed on this stage.
There's a vibration that comes with that, and it's just such a fulfilling experience as an audience member and as an artist on stage as well.
There's a reason that people come to Orchestra Hall, and it's not just about the music. It's about the sense of community.
In some ways, this building is a looking glass for what this city used to be, what it became, and what it still could be in the future. Cultural history, economic history, political history, our history with race in this country and in this city, all of that has flowed through this building.
This hall has come to symbolize survival. Survival of the culture of music and the arts in Detroit, survival of the orchestra itself, and survival of the building, which was, of course, set to be destroyed. And yet, here we are in one of the most glorious buildings for hearing music.
The story of Orchestra Hall is the story of Detroit. It's been celebrated and sometimes forgotten. It's been marveled at and left to decay. But in spite of the many challenges it has faced in 100 years, it still stands today as a testament to the resilience of a city, its people, and their hall.
I think Orchestra Hall is made special because Detroit is such a unique city. The citizens make the history, and they make the building and make the moment. And there's just a thing that this city has that's just, I've always loved this city. Even when it was going through its rough times and it's barren, there's an energy here.
It is a much storied Orchestra Hall. Each person has a unique experience at Orchestra Hall. And the more those come to be heard and thought about, the more that the stories of Orchestra Hall increase.
I've been fortunate enough to attend concerts in some of the best halls in America and in Europe, and there's no place that I would rather listen to music than Orchestra Hall. I think it's the acoustics, it's the intimacy of the hall.
I've heard Wynton Marsalis literally push the microphone away and wander around the hall and just tell the whole audience, this is the best space to play.
It's like when you step out on the stage, there's a sound there that's its own character. And as soon as you hit a note, you go, ba, and then I go, ba, but the rest of the sound goes, ba, right? And it resonates through the room. And then you go, oh.
Orchestra Hall doesn't make a sound. It's the sound of Orchestra Hall that people speak about, but it's the silence of Orchestra Hall in which that sound opens.
A lot of halls soak up the sound. This hall actually helps create and allows the sound to grow, to linger.
The hall is kind of an extension of our instrument. You're never going to have to push your sound to be heard. The hall will do most of the work for you.
You can hear a pin drop in this hall from the very back seat. It just fills the room.
I'll never forget, actually, the first rehearsal I had before I became music director and hearing this sound come off of this stage. I was not prepared for it. I didn't know much about Orchestra Hall, and I was totally floored by it.
Lena Horne is the one that made this statement that she didn't need a microphone, that kind of situation. But I saw others. There was a lot of people that didn't. Sometimes the microphone, everything went out, the sound left, and it continued. Nobody knew any difference.
I think we sometimes are amazed at Orchestra Hall's acoustics and how they could have accomplished that. But I think it's just one of those things where the magic of the people coming together just made it happen.
While it's hard to imagine today, there was a time when Detroit was a city still searching for an identity. There was no Motor City or Motown sound. The automotive industry was in its infancy, and early supporters of the arts struggled to convince their community that music was not merely a benefit of life in a thriving city, but a necessity. While on record as the nation's fourth oldest orchestra, by 1911, the city's symphony seemed already too weak to survive and had closed its doors.
There was a Detroit Symphony Orchestra before Orchestra Hall. There had been an iteration of the Detroit Orchestra very early, far more than 100 years ago, in the late 19th century. That iteration died, and then it was reborn in 1914 as what we think of maybe as our modern Detroit Symphony Orchestra.
In 1914, 10 ladies of Detroit, gathering in the music room of Miss Frances Sibley, started an orchestra again. They each gave, I think, $100, and they got friends involved, and they provided a series of concerts in that February, and then seasons after that.
Just having an orchestra after having had it collapse was a victory for the city. So it existed, but it is fair to say, certainly, that it was not until Osip Gabrilowicz came here that we were a force on the sort of the national scene. We're talking about one of the world's great pianists who comes out of a long tradition, Russian-born conductor. We won the lottery in some ways in that Gabrilowicz comes here and is intrigued by the city and by the orchestra.
Gabrilowicz played and conducted for the 1918-1919 season. And they were performing their last concert at the Arcadia Ballroom, which was just down Woodward Avenue here. And the manager, Mr. Harry Cyphers, was standing off stage at the end of the concert, and Gabrilowicz finally, the applause was just rapturous and yelling and everything else, and Gabrilowicz walked off, and Harry Cyphers said, "Maestro, listen to the reaction of this Detroit audience. Look at it. Now you must agree to accept the offer of our board of directors to become our next conductor." And Gabrilowicz said very simply, "Well, you know the one condition under which I will return. There is no suitable home for music in Detroit. So build me a concert hall or I won't come back."
In the early summer of 1919, the Symphony's board of directors were at a crossroads. They had escaped extinction and found a world-class conductor to lead them. But to keep him, they needed a world-class venue to play in, and had only a matter of months in which to build it.